The static hissed like a cornered snake. On the main holodisplay in the Bagram TOC, the Zeritan Depression was a three-dimensional wound of jagged, shadow-choked rock. Red icons blinked with terminal urgency. Trident 4, a SEAL team sent to neutralize a high-value target, was compromised, pinned down in a kill box that had just eaten a flight of F-16s. The Vipers had been chewed up by a new generation of integrated air defense, a seamless net of radar-guided cannons and infrared missiles woven together by a predictive targeting AI. The last transmission from the ground was a garbled plea smothered by the roar of 23mm shells walking across their position. In the dim, refrigerated air of the command center, the silence that followed was heavier than any explosion. Major Anya Elias stood near the back, a ghost in a flight suit, her presence so quiet she was practically part of the architecture. She wasn't on the flight roster. Her aircraft, a stripped-down F-22A from a defunct test squadron, wasn't even officially in the theater's order of battle. She just watched the blinking red lights, her expression unreadable, feeling the rhythm of the coming catastrophe in the marrow of her bones. The storm front collapsing over the mountains was just an exclamation point on a mission that had already flatlined. Colonel Marcus Hayes, commander of the 455th Air Expeditionary Wing, jabbed a finger at the display, his face a mask of frustration. "There's no corridor," he bit out, the words aimed at the room but landing on the grim-faced liaison from SOCOM. "The AI is predictive. It's not just tracking. It's learning." It anticipated Viper's ingress and saturated the canyon with overlapping fields of fire before they even broke the ridgeline. The wind shear alone is redlining. We send another conventional asset in there, we're just giving them more scrap metal. The mission is a wash. We move to a contingency rescue and pray. The SOCOM liaison, a Navy captain with ice in his veins, didn't flinch. "Contingency is not an option, Colonel. The package they were after is critical. And we don't leave our people behind." Hayes ran a hand over his crew cut. "Then you're asking for a miracle, Captain. We have no aircraft that can survive that cauldron. Not with the weather, not with the jamming, and certainly not with an AI that knows our playbook better than we do." He was right by every metric in the book. The operational parameters were impossible. The risk assessment was a solid black wall of unacceptable losses. The institutional caution was a fortress, and for good reason. The Zeritan Depression was a tomb tonight, and he wasn't authorized to furnish it with more bodies. Anya Elias stepped out of the shadows. Her voice was low, calm, cutting through the tense procedural chatter. "I can make a corridor, sir." Hayes turned, his eyes narrowing as he finally registered her. Major Elias, the pilot whose file was a patchwork of blacked-out redactions and glowing instructor reviews from a program that no longer existed. The woman who flew the Ghost Raptor parked at the far end of the flight line, a plane the maintenance crews treated with a kind of superstitious reverence. "Major," Hayes said, his tone dismissive, "you're not even cleared for this theater's combat ops. Your bird isn't configured for close air support." Anya's gaze didn't waver. "It's configured for me, Colonel. I know that valley. The AI is learning from our doctrine. It doesn't have my data." A long silence stretched. It wasn't a plea. It was a statement of fact. Hayes looked from her to the blinking red icons, to the face of the Navy captain. He was trapped between protocol and annihilation. "You have one pass," he said, the words tasting like ash. "One. You get in, you suppress that AAA, and you get out. You are not a hero, you are a tool. Understood?" Anya simply nodded. Understood. She turned and walked out, her stride economical and without ceremony. In the maintenance hangar, Master Sergeant Chief Miller was waiting, a battered aluminum case in his hand. He'd seen Elias fly things that would make engineers weep. He didn't need orders from the TOC to know what was coming. He opened the case. Inside, nestled in foam, was a single flight patch. It was a simple black circle with a stylized, faded gray wraith on it. Her old call sign, Spectre. She hadn't worn it in years. She took it without a word and pressed it onto the Velcro square on her flight suit's shoulder. She ran a gloved hand down the nose of her F-22, its paint scarred with the faint outlines of sensor pods long since removed. The machine felt alive under her touch, a familiar thrum of latent power. She knew this route, not from a map, but from the inside out, from 1,000 hours in a simulator running physics models that the AI in the valley couldn't possibly comprehend. The Raptor, call sign Wraith-01, sliced through the turbulent air, a dark arrowhead against the bruised purple of the storm clouds. Anya Elias didn't climb. She descended. She plunged the F-22 into the mouth of the Serpent's Coil, the main canyon leading to the SEAL's position, dropping below the effective floor of the enemy's primary search radar. The canyon walls rose up on either side of her canopy, sheer faces of granite so close she could see the water stains from millennia of flash floods. Wind shear slammed the aircraft, a physical blow that would have sent a less experienced pilot into the rock. She didn't fight it. She rode it, letting the river of air guide her, making micro-adjustments with her stick and rudder that were more instinct than calculation. Her helmet-mounted display flickered, painting the world in the ghostly green of night vision, the data stream struggling against the powerful jamming emanating from the valley floor. On the command net, the silence was absolute. No one dared to speak. On the SEAL's encrypted channel, a new sound bled through the static, a low, tearing roar that wasn't artillery or wind. It was the sound of air being ripped apart by two Pratt & Whitney engines. The SEAL team leader, call sign Mako, pressed himself against a rock, listening. "What the hell is that?" his comms man whispered. Mako didn't answer. He'd heard rumors of a ghost pilot, a legend from the early days of the advanced fighter programs. He never believed them. Until now, the AI saw her, not as an F-22, but as a high-speed atmospheric anomaly conforming to no known attack profile. It calculated a firing solution and the world erupted. Tracer rounds, brilliant green and red lines of death, reached out from hidden batteries, trying to build a cage of flak around her. But she wasn't where the AI predicted she would be. She rolled, pulling the Raptor into a brutal, high-G knife-edge turn, her body screaming under the strain, the G-suit squeezing her legs and torso to keep the blood in her head. She flew not in a straight line, but in a chaotic, flowing pattern, using the canyon's curves as a shield. Her target wasn't the guns. It was the brain. On her display, a small, hardened bunker nestled in a cliff face blinked, the central command node for the AI. She armed a GBU-39 small-diameter bomb. The bay doors snapped open for less than a second. The bomb dropped, a silver dart in the darkness. She didn't wait to see the impact. She was already jinking left, dropping even lower, her wingtips seeming to skim the foaming river below. A heartbeat later, a flash of white light silenced the canyon, followed by a concussive boom that echoed off the walls. On the ground, the relentless, coordinated rhythm of the AAA faltered. The guns began firing in dumb, localized patterns, their hive mind shattered. Over the net, the SOCOM liaison's voice was tight with disbelief. "TOC Trident. That fire just went stupid. Who is on station?" Colonel Hayes's voice came back, stripped of its earlier dismissal, replaced by a tense, focused awe. "Trident, that is Wraith-01." The call sign landed in the TOC and on the battlefield with the weight of a physical object. Spectre. The ghost was real. The reprieve was short-lived. The enemy system, though crippled, was resilient. The AI, deprived of its central node, switched to a decentralized, redundant protocol. Individual gun and missile emplacements came back online, now operating independently, their machine learning algorithms adapting. This was worse. Instead of one predictable enemy, she now faced dozens of them, each one a new and separate threat. Manpad's teams on the high ridges, previously held in reserve, began sending up infrared-guided missiles, angry streaks of smoke and fire clawing at the sky. A proximity shell exploded off her starboard wing, the shrapnel hammering against the composite skin like a blast from a giant shotgun. A cascade of amber and red warnings lit up her console. Right stabilator hydraulic pressure dropping. Fuel feed line B showing a microleak. She silenced the alarms with a practiced flick of a switch, her mind already processing the new variables. The aircraft was hurt. It was bleeding. The fight had become personal. "Wraith, report status." Colonel Hayes's voice crackled, the tone now one of a partner, not a superior. I need you to hold the line. Extraction bird is 5 minutes out. Anya's response was calm. Her breathing even despite the G-forces. Holding the line. Tell Mako to move to the secondary extraction point. The primary is a death trap, she knew. The AI hadn't just been controlling the guns. It had been shaping the battlefield, herding the SEALs into a pre-selected kill zone. She had to break that plan, too. The secondary extraction point was a narrow ledge at the base of a massive waterfall, a curtain of white water plunging 1,000 feet down a sheer cliff. It was shielded from above, but a new lethal threat had appeared on her threat display. A mobile F-22 launcher, nestled in a cave behind the waterfall itself, perfectly positioned to swat the incoming PAVE-low helicopter out of the sky. There was no angle for a conventional bomb run. Getting a weapon into that cave was suicide. A new kind of math took over Anya's mind, a fusion of physics, instinct, and pure nerve. She dipped her nose, accelerating toward the base of the waterfall. The SEALs watched in horror as the F-22, trailing a faint vapor of leaking fuel, seemed to aim directly for the wall of water. She wasn't going around it. She was going through it. She hit the waterfall spray at over 500 knots. For a heart-stopping second, her entire world was a roaring, blinding whiteness. The cockpit shuddered violently. Then she was through, climbing vertically up the rock face, using the updraft from the falls and the sheer power of her engines to claw for altitude. At the apex of her climb, 1,000 feet up, she performed a maneuver that existed only in theoretical manuals. A zero airspeed reversal. For a fraction of a second, the Raptor hung motionless, a predator poised at the top of its strike, before it fell backward, nose pointed directly down at the cave behind the falls. She released her last SDB. The bomb fell true. Anya fired her engines, pulling out of the dive so low that her thrust scorched the rocks at the base of the falls. The explosion was immense, a deep-throated detonation that blew the waterfall outward in a massive cloud of rock and steam. The SA-22 was gone. The path was clear for the extraction helicopter. Its call sign, Lifeline 06, crackled on the net. Lifeline is inbound, but the ridges were still hot. Manpad's teams, enraged and desperate, were lighting up the sky. Anya had no bombs left. She had 2 flares and a damaged aircraft. She became the shield. She pushed the throttle forward and began to dance. She flew a tight, chaotic orbit around the extraction point, deliberately presenting herself as the more immediate, more tempting target. She was a matador, her wounded Raptor the Cape, drawing the fiery horns of the missiles. The first missile came up. She broke hard right, dropping a single flare. The missile, confused, chased the bloom of heat and detonated harmlessly. The second followed. She jinked left, then pulled vertical, pouring every ounce of power into a climb, forcing the missile to bleed its energy in the thin air before it could reach her. On the ground, the SEALs, clambering aboard the PAVE-low, watched in stunned silence. The F-22 was a specter of dark metal against the stormy sky, a lone guardian angel locked in a deadly ballet with a dozen points of light. Mako stood on the ramp, his rifle held loose, his gaze fixed on the fight above. "Get us home, Spectre," he whispered into his mic.